Glad you could join us. Today, we're doing the Awakening Report instead of taking your Bible questions. This is going to be 2 weeks in a row, just doing something a little different. And I have a special guest from Israel. We have Aaron Lipkin from Lipkin Tours, and I'm really excited. He's going to share with us some cool stuff about the Mt Ebal Hebrew Inscription, which I don't know, just maybe could be suggesting that the Bible's true. I don't know, something like that. Right? Hey, so great to have you with us, Aaron. Really, it's wonderful.
Great to be with you, Pastor Doug, and I'm really honored to be on your show and to share this amazing discovery with all our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. So, give us a quick overview. Some people maybe have never heard of this thing. So, what is in a sentence, what's the Mount Ebal inscription?
Mt Ebal inscription is a really recently discovered item from a site called Joshua's Altar. Before we dive into the discovery of the inscription and the press conference that we just that we saw a few months ago, we really have to understand the site itself. We have to understand the importance of Joshua's Altar. With your permission, I will say a few words first about the discovery of the altar in the 1980s. For many years, the academic world has been claiming that all the stories in the Bible are a fairy tale. They never happened. I'm talking about specifically the stories from Genesis to, say, Samuel 2 or Kings 1. The idea was that the whole writing of the Bible, of these books, was done in a much later period in the kingdom of Judah, even after that, around the year 400, 300 BCE. And so it's basically made up. And there were a couple of attempts by archaeologists to try and find proof for many of the biblical stories that we read in the Bible. There's some evidence for some of the stories, but then there's also a lack of evidence for the others. And I'll give you two examples. For example, the story of the conquest of Jericho. So we know that the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and went to conquer Jericho. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, crossing in a very specific point of the Jordan River. And archaeologists couldn't find any proof for such a crossing in the area of Jericho. The conquest of Jericho, according to the archaeology, the findings show that Jericho was already in ruins when Joshua entered in the 12th century BCE. The city of Ai was also in ruins, the second city that Joshua conquered, and that also was a problem in the chronology and the proof of the historicity of the Bible. And so these are just two examples of how problematic the archaeology is, and how problematic it is to fit it to what we think is the biblical narrative. And so this was going on for many years. And, I, as a child, a student in high school in Jerusalem, was taught by my Jewish teacher that these stories are a fairy tale, that the Exodus never happened, that Moses and Joshua never existed. And this is the base of our identity. The Torah, the Exodus, we celebrate every year the Passover Seder. And what my teacher basically told me was that I am celebrating a lie. I'm celebrating a historical event that never happened. And that's because she was basing her educational curriculum according to the academic world. And what happened, basically, the reason why there was not enough proof is because the areas where these stories happened, Judea and Samaria, were unresearched. When we read about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob going from Elon Moreh, Shechem, to Bethel, to Jerusalem, to Hebron, to Bethlehem. These are all sites that are centered in the central highlands of Israel, Judea and Samaria. And these areas were specifically not researched thoroughly. So there was really no reason for these academics to claim that there's no proof because they didn't research it. That is why I really believe that the academic world didn't really look for proof. The academic world had an agenda, and that agenda was to bash Bible. It was to deny the existence of God, deny the possibility of miracles, deny divine providence, and they didn't care about the facts. They just wanted to deny the Bible, everything that's connected to religion or anything like that. And luckily, in 1967, in June, Israel liberated the biblical heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria. And that allowed Israeli archaeologists to start researching the biblical heartland and to do it objectively without any hidden agendas. And a young professor by the name of Professor Adam Zertal started researching the area of the tribal land of Manasseh and Ephraim in Samaria. And he found a lot of evidence that proved the veracity of the period of the conquest of Joshua, the areas where the crossing of the Jordan really occurred, according to the archaeology. And maybe we'll talk about that on another program. But what we want to do is focus right now on a certain archaeological find that Zertal found, and that was in 1980. Adam Zertal, an atheist, left-wing archaeologist that doesn't believe in the historicity of the Bible, is doing a survey, an archaeological survey of the slopes of Mt Ebal. Now, let's stop here for a second. We have to understand that Mt Ebal and Mount Gerizim, adjacent to it, are very important in the Bible. In Deuteronomy 11, Moses commands the Israelites to go there and to perform a ceremony of blessings and curses. And then in Deuteronomy 27, there's even an expanded detail of how to do this ceremony. Half of the tribes stand on one mountain, half of the tribes stand on another. The Levites, the priests, shout the 12 curses and blessings, and the people of Israel, all of them are standing there and saying amen to that. And then in Joshua 8, Joshua performs that ceremony according to Moses' command. And the chapter in Joshua is very interesting. It says that all the people of Israel were there, men, women, children, elders, even foreigners were there. And this is probably the second and only time where the whole people of Israel were present in a national event, just like Mount Sinai. In other words, Mount Sinai and the event at Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim are equivalent. They're very important, and both of them, the Israelites are receiving the commandments of God and basically signing a contract. They are joining a covenant with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is, I can't go into so much to say that this is probably the most important biblical site, the most important biblical event that happens in the Bible in the land of Israel. This is important for all our viewers to understand. And so when Adam Zertal is walking in the 1980s on Mount Ebal, he is not looking for the altar that Joshua built. He's not looking for anything biblical. He's just surveying, just looking at the ground, looking for ancient remains. And he bounces into a mysterious compound that is really, really, really mysterious. And I'm going to show this is, by the way, a picture of the valley between Mount Ebal on the right and Mount Gerizim on the left. The city that we see in the valley is the city of Shechem, modern Nablus today. and in the center of it is the ancient city of Shechem. I'm going to continue on with the slide, and what I want to show you is how the mysterious compound that Zertal found looks like. And so, one second. Okay, this is what we see here right now is an aerial of the slopes of Mount Ebal. And at the center of the picture, we see a mysterious structure, mysterious wall that is going in a very weird shape. This is an aerial that I took with my drone, and you can see that the wall is going in a very in a shape that doesn't fit the geography of the mountain. The shape of that wall has a significance of its own, and so Zertal goes into this shape, into this wall, and he finds a very high percentage of pottery sherds that date from the time of the Israelite settlement in the land. We're talking roughly between 1400 and 1300 BCE. Adam Zertal goes into this compound, and at the highest point of the compound, he finds basically a pile of stone. This pile of stone really attracts his curiosity because it doesn't look like a modern structure. It actually has a lot of pottery sherds mixed into those stones, and so this is how the wall of that pile of stone looked like when they found it. And Zertal decided in 1982 to excavate there. And this was the beginning of an amazing discovery.
Wow, that's really exciting. It's just incredible stuff. So, boy, 1982, I'll tell you, archaeology moves pretty slow. Seems to me it's not in any rush, but I think we are the nice recipients of now discovering that he found, or somebody in the team found the pottery sherd, right? And they were able to decode this. So this is such cool stuff. And I totally get where you're coming from. And I've heard the same arguments that, the Bible's not true. I remember reading a rabbi was saying that, Moses might have just been smoking something up on a mountain. And I'm like, how can you say that? Like, this is the most foundational thing. And if it's not rooted in reality, then why are we wasting our time doing any of these things? But if it is in reality, then it's the coolest thing ever. I mean, you should make up your mind. Pick one. Just
Pastor Tiger, I want to emphasize what you just said because it's very important. That rabbi that you're talking about does not believe in divine providence. He does not believe in prophecy. He does not believe that a human can talk to a divine entity, because that in the eyes of, I would say, Reform rabbis, maybe atheists, this is something that is unacceptable. This is something that is primitive. It's maybe even how do you call it? It's science fiction. It's not something that's possible, and I think that is the line that's the border between people who really believe in God, who really believe in the Bible, because the Bible is a book of prophecy. It's a book of miracles. There's a very thick line between those people and people that say that they are traditional or culturally Jewish, but they do not believe in. They really do not believe in God and in the Bible. And I have to say that Adam Zertal was exactly that. At that time, he did not believe that the stories of the Bible were true and that anything was true in the Bible at all. And when they start excavating this pile of stone in 1982, what they basically do is they peel off the outer layer, and comes out of this this pile of stone a mysterious structure that Zertal couldn't really explain. A box of stone, field stones, a ramp going up to that box of stones. And he never saw such a structure in the land of Israel. He went to libraries to check exactly what it is, and it really couldn't find any parallels to it. This is a model of a better model for people to understand exactly how it looked like. There you see this box, this rectangular box of stone, high ground, and then up to it goes a ramp and secondary ramps on both sides of that building. Zertal digs inside, finds 2 meters of ashes and bones that are sent to be analyzed. They all belong to animals that are kosher according to the Bible. This is another sketch of the altar and the structure, and it's important to mention that if we're talking about layers or levels in this archaeological site, we have the external pile of stone that Zertal writes looked like something that was put intentionally on the structure. In other words, it's not an earthquake that the walls collapsed. It was put intentionally, stones were put intentionally on the structure. So when the piles were taken off, you found this huge structure that we just showed. And in the center of that structure is an even earlier structure, a circular installation of some sort that is in the center of the box, the rectangular box that we talked about. So there are 3 levels. You have the circular installation that I just mentioned. You have the bigger structure on top of it, and then you have the stones that covered the whole structure. Other things that were found there were vessels containing that contained liquids, water, oil, handles that had special markings on them that don't appear anywhere else except Shiloh, and that's an interesting coincidence, or it's not a coincidence. Egyptian jewelry, Egyptian scarabs, and a dice that is believed to be, well, maybe we'll talk about that later, a pumice chalice that was found, which is this sort of an incense altar, which was also found in another place in the Sinai. So this is also another interesting connection, and very, very important. A lot of plaster was found inside the box that I'm talking about, the high ground. Why is that important? It's important because when God commands the Israelites, Moses commands the Israelites to do this ceremony of blessings and curses on Mount Ebal, one of the clear commandments is to plaster stones and write on them the law. So the picture that we're seeing right now are pieces of that plaster that was found. And as we speak, it is right now being diagnosed to check if there's any writing on them. And this is going to be a very interesting discovery if we can prove that on this plaster we can find the earliest copy of the Bible. So we'll have to wait for that.
Oh, wow. I can hardly wait. I mean, that would be really, really exciting. Right. And so people don't know, for the long time, the earliest manuscript we had of the Bible was about 1000 AD, roughly, the Masoretic text. And then, of course, we had the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that took it back till roughly the time of Yeshua, maybe a little bit earlier than that, sometime in the Second Temple period. And it was a major, major discovery, right? So if we had something even earlier, say from 1400-ish, right, that would be phenomenal. That would be just amazing.
So before the Dead Sea Scrolls and the time that we're talking about, there was actually another inscription, or actually 2 more inscriptions that were found. One of them was the Aaronic blessing that was found in Jerusalem on a silver scroll. Dated to the just before the destruction of the first temple, around the year 600 BCE. So that was actually the oldest copy of verses from the Bible. In recent years, another inscription was found which was not from the Bible, and so we can definitely say that until that the earliest copy of part of the Bible was from the year 600 BCE, the Aaronic blessing. And so
that's exciting. Yeah.
Adam Zertal is finding this amazing structure that again doesn't have any parallels anywhere in the world. Nothing in Egypt, nothing in Babylon, nothing in Assyria. And I have to say something. Adam Zertal didn't even stop to think maybe I should look in Jewish sources, okay? Because again, in the eyes of the academics, the eyes of the professors, everything that is from the Jewish or biblical source is unreliable. And so Adam Zertal didn't even think about looking in Jewish sources and Jewish books. And as I said, he couldn't find any type of parallel structure in other civilizations around in the Mediterranean area. And so what Zertal does, one day he sits and he makes a sketch of this weird structure. And as he sketches it, an Orthodox Jew, a religious Jew, passes by, and he sees this, and he says, "Professor, is this what you found? This the structure that you found on Mount Ebal?" And Zertal says, "Yes, I don't know what it is." And this Jew suddenly is all on fire, and he's excited, and he just runs away. And Zertal describes in his book, A Nation Born, that he's puzzled. What's going on with this religious Jew? What happened to him? Did I insult him? And this religious Jew comes back with a book. That book is called the Mishnah, which is the oral traditions that were passed on and were eventually written in books during the Second Temple period. And he opens a book that describes the different vessels of the Second Temple. Again, this is the time of Jesus. And he opens the book on the page that talks about the altar at the Second Temple. And Adam Zertal looks at this sketch of the Second Temple main altar. And he looks at the sketch that he just did on the table of the structure that he found on Mount Ebal. And he sees striking similarity, a rectangular box, a ramp that leads to it, and a secondary ramp around it. Zertal describes in his book that this moment in his life totally changed him. It totally overwhelmed him. It just destroyed everything that he was brought on and that was educated in the university in archaeology. Because for the first time in his life, he saw a clear proof that what he found on Mount Ebal was an Israelite altar, a huge Israelite altar, one of a kind in the land of Israel. And at that point, he looked at this religious Jew and he said, "You understand what this is? This is Joshua's altar. And if this is Joshua's altar, then Joshua existed, and Moses existed, and the Exodus happened." And
wow,
the religious Jew looked at him and said, "Of course."
Mapitom, of course.
Of course. You understand?
He probably said no.
But Adam Zertal really touched the most important, I believe, the most important point in this discovery, and that is that Joshua's altar is not just an event. Joshua's altar is a connecting point between the 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch, and the early prophets. Because on the one hand, you have Moses commanding the Israelites and Joshua to do this ceremony. And on the other side, in the book of Joshua, the early prophets, you have Joshua fulfilling Moses' command. And so by finding Joshua's altar, Adam Zertal was able to prove both parts of the Bible. And I think that that's the biggest conclusion of this discovery. And after this discovery, a very important professor, Professor Steger from the Harvard University, said, if there is an altar on Mount Ebal, as Zertal claims, we biblical scholars should all go back to kindergarten. This is
Great.
this is the conclusion. The conclusion is that everything that they learned, everything that they wrote, all the papers and books are all going to the garbage.
Yeah.
And
Goodness.
and this discovery should have changed everything, but unfortunately it didn't, because again, we're talking about agendas. We're not talking about real science. We're not talking about real research. We're talking about a very clear agenda to deny God and the Bible. And Zertal was sincere enough to say, I was wrong, the Bible was right. And I think that this is the important. And now that we've discussed the discovery of Joshua's altar, now is the time to continue the discussion about our recent discovery.
Awesome. I can hardly wait.
So here's the problem. Adam Zertal finished excavating the site in 1989. And the next step is to write a final report on the discovery. Unfortunately, because of the agendas, because people in the academic world understood that this is a knockout, this is an atomic bomb in the field of archaeology, they did whatever they could to block Adam Zertal, to block his crew, to defund them, and to try and stop in any way the publishing of a final report. And so the discovery academically was stuck for many years. Add to that the political changes in Israel, the signing of the Oslo agreements. One of those, I would say, archaeologists that have an agenda made it his career to take Joshua's altar out of Israeli control. And they actually put the border between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli control, so that the altar will be under Palestinian control. The moment that happened, Israeli archaeologists were banned from researching this site. And on the other hand, the Palestinian Authority couldn't research it, thank God, because the Israeli government wouldn't let it. And so the site was, from research-wise, was stuck for 30 years. And what we've seen in the past 2 years was vandalism, a lot of Muslim vandalism on this site, to the perimeter wall, to the altar itself. They even burned a tire inside the altar, desecrating it. And so I have to say that the last few years were very hard for me personally, as someone who was very involved in Joshua's altar and the understanding of its importance. And so one day I said to myself, enough is enough. And I partnered with a Texan archaeologist. And we both understood that archaeological excavation is not possible. But looking at the wet sifting project of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the idea was to extract the archaeological dump of Adam Zertal from the 1980s, move it to a safe location, and there wet sift it. Now let's stop for a second and understand what is sifting. After extracting the material during an excavation, an archaeological excavation, the rubble, the dirt is being dry sifted on a net. And that's when you find, the particles that might be important, like scarabs, and pottery with inscription on it. The problem is that dry sifting is not enough. If you really want to do the job well, you have to do wet sifting. You also have to do the washing of those findings, because sometimes they look like rocks. And so Adams Zertal didn't wet sift. It wasn't something that archaeologists did in the 1980s. And also it was really hard because you had to bring large quantities of water to a remote location. And so Scott Stripling, the archaeologist from Texas, said, Aaron, you extract the materials, I bring the crew, and we will wet sift the material. And who knows, maybe we'll find something. And I have to tell you that on the first extraction that I did, I remember waking up in the morning, putting my prayer shawl on and my tefillin, my phylacteries, and looking at the heavens and saying, God, please make us successful. Please let this extraction go without any interruption. And please, please, please let us find something that would change everything, would totally break those Bible deniers. And God listened to my prayer. I can say that today, because when this is a picture of the extraction. You can see Christian volunteers extracting the materials. We also had Jewish volunteers that extract. We went there about 3 times to extract the material. The material was brought to a township called Shavei Shomron, and there Scott Stripling's staff sat with wet sifting stations. You can see it at the upper part of the screen, and they washed the material. And one day I get a phone call from Scott. Scott says, Aaron, get over here quickly. And I came there, and Scott opened his hand, and I saw a weird object, a square object that I didn't know what it was. And I asked Scott, what is this? And Scott said, Aaron, I've seen this in the past from later periods, the Roman period, the Hellenistic period, the Persian period. These are the ones that I know from later are curse tablets. They are tablets that were used for putting a curse on someone. And this really looks like those types of tablets. But the interesting thing is that the site that we're talking about, Joshua's altar, and this is why it was important for me to explain about the site. The site was only used once in history. It was only used during the late Bronze and early Iron Age period, and that's it. So everything that we find in that site and from that site is from that period. And so Scott was really excited because he said, Aaron, if this is indeed a cursed tablet, then it has to be from the time of Joshua. And we looked at it and we felt that this was a historical day. We didn't even know what we found, what's inside. We just felt that this was a very important discovery. The lead tablet was sent to the university in Jerusalem. They tried to open it because it's kind of like this folded metal, and it started breaking. So they stopped. We looked all around the world, and we found in Prague a laboratory that has a special X-ray technology that can not just scan the outer part of the lead tablet, but can also scan inside. And they worked on it. They did tens of thousands of scans, and I'm not exaggerating. And the results started coming in. And I'm getting a phone call 3 months ago from Scott. And Scott said, Aaron, they are starting to identify ancient Hebrew letters. And I remember when he said that, I felt shivers all over my body, because I understood the implications of such a discovery. And just a month ago, Scott Stripling came out in Texas with a press conference to present the Hebrew letters. Now, before we go into the text itself that was found, we have to understand that Hebrew fonts changed in the past 3,500 years. Most of our viewers know that Hebrew letters today look like the upper line. Those Hebrew letters are actually derived from the Second Temple Hebrew, which is on the lower line. So you just mentioned the Dead Sea Scrolls. These are the letters that appear in the Dead Sea Scrolls. However, people have to understand that these letters are fairly new. They came into the Hebrew culture, so to say, after the return of the exiles from Babylon. They're actually called in Israel Babylonian letters. Before those fonts were in use, in other words, prior to the destruction of the first temple, Israelites used what's called a Phoenician font or a Proto-Canaanite font. This font was in use from the time of King Solomon until the destruction of the first temple. Before that font was in use, there was an earlier font. And the earlier font has a couple of names. It could be hieroglyphic Hebrew, it could be iconic Hebrew, but it's a font that was heavily affected by the hieroglyphs in Egypt. Every letter has a picture of something that represents it. For example, the letter Yud is represented by a hand, Yad, that starts with the letter Yud. The letter Daled is a fish. A fish in Hebrew is Dag. So Daled and Dag, and so on and so forth. And this is the letters that were used, I would say, roughly from the Exodus, probably even earlier than that, until King David. This is the font that probably was in the Torah that Moses received on Mount Sinai. This is how the Torah was written during his time. Now that we understand this, let's look at the letters that were found inside the lead tablet. I don't know, can you hear this, Pastor Doug? Tell me if you can hear this.
Okay. I'm not able to hear it, unfortunately.
Okay, so we will skip that, but the press conference is actually on my YouTube channel, and our viewers are more than welcome to listen to it and get the complete picture. But this is Scott Stripling right here, and he is presenting the text that was found inside and outside of the lead tablet. And we have the Hebrew on the right side, and our left side we have the English. And the English reads as follows: "You are cursed by the God Yahweh, cursed. You will die cursed. Die cursed, cursed. You will surely die. Cursed by Yahweh, you are cursed." You have to understand, this is scary. I mean,
yeah.
When I got the English, I was scared, and then when I got the Hebrew, it was even scarier. but let's look for a second.
It's really interesting that it's a Yud Hey Vav. Where's the Hey, right? I mean, it's missing that
Right.
Seems quite intentional, apparently.
There are a couple of theories about it. It's not rare. This also appears in other external sources as well. But I believe that when you look at the names of the prophets, for example, Jeremiah, Isaiah, the name of the Lord is in their name,
Right.
and
Yirmiyahu, Yeshayahu.
it's exactly, and it's 3 letters. Sometimes it's 3 letters, sometimes it's more, but this is a form that appears, but the fact that we have the name of the Lord in the earliest Hebrew inscription,
Yeah.
it is probably one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever.
Wow, that's really cool.
Ever.
That is.
And
there's a question someone's asking,
yes,
isn't it,
yes.
could it be dangerous to handle a cursed tablet? What?
Well, I think that I don't want to go in. We're talking about archaeology now.
Yeah.
And
Stay on target then. That's fine.
Archaeologically, this is an amazing find, and this find will probably continue to be analyzed and then probably presented in an important museum in Israel, maybe the Israel Museum. So archaeologically, that's not a relevant question. The question is spiritually, if this is something that is dangerous, and the question is if this is an amulet, or if this is a legal document. And the researchers that basically found this text and diagnosed it and agreed that this is the text, believe that this is not an amulet. This is not a sort of a magical artifact. This is a legal document. This is a binding document. The fact that it was written on a lead metal strip and was later folded is a clear sign in the ancient world of something being a legal document. The fact that it's written in the inside and the outside as well also strengthens that view. So to our viewer who asked this question, if it's a legal document, it's not dangerous spiritually. But I think that the benefits of finding such a finding are more important than the possible danger, because this text just destroys the Bible deniers. And we have to understand why. Let's first look at the letters. We have 46 letters. We have the word arur, cursed, 6 times on the inside, 6 times on the outside. By the way, the writing was done with a stylus, with a pen, and as an indentation. It was engraved at the lead tablet. And that's interesting. Why? Because when you engrave something on a flat piece of metal, it doesn't just show on one side, it shows on the other. What I'm basically saying is that this text appears 4 times, negative and positive on the upper part and negative and positive on the lower part. Another thing that's interesting here is that the name of the Lord appears here, and also the name El. Why is this important? We'll talk about that in a minute. And also the fact that some of the letters are fully vowelized and some are not. Let's keep that in mind. And I just want to also point out that there are 46 letters on this eeny beeny tiny piece of metal, which clearly shows a very high technological knowledge of that scribe, the one that wrote this. This is not a primitive man cave. This is a scribe that if he wrote this, there's no reason why he can't write the whole Bible. This is important. There is something called chiastic parallelism. This is a not just a legal document. This is also a song. This is a very complicated structure of a song. It starts in a certain way, it begins the opposite, and in the middle of it is the word curse. It's very complicated to write, especially on such a small object. With your permission, let's start finishing by summarizing this text and now trying to understand why it's so important.
Fantastic.
This is, by the way, a picture of the name of the Lord as it appears in that tablet. And I'll just point out the fact that at that time, the direction of the reading was not yet agreed upon. In other words, you can find sentences in this ancient hieroglyphic Hebrew from right to left. You can also find words that you can read from left to right. Sometimes a text is right to left and left to right. So there hasn't been standardized yet in this time. But this, what you're seeing right now, is the name of the Lord as it appears in that lead tablet. Let's just summarize what we have. We have 48 letters inside. We have 46 letters outside. Each of those copies has a negative and a positive. So we have 4 copies of this text and a total of 94 letters on this really small lead tablet. The name of the Lord appears 4 times. The name of the Lord and El, which is another name of God, appear together. We have chiastic parallelism, which is a very clear sign of high writing abilities. We have unvowelized and vowelized Hebrew spelling, which is something that totally changes the science of linguism of the ancient Hebrew, and it's the most ancient version of Hebrew font that was ever found. Let's finish this amazing presentation, may I say, with the conclusions. We can make a very clear statement that this is the first and only and the most ancient text containing the name of the Lord in the land of Israel, in a site that was believed to be Israelite. Now we know for sure that Joshua's altar is an Israelite site, for sure. The Canaanites did not worship the Lord, the name of the Lord, and so the only possible ones are the Israelites. The text is Hebrew, so this is clearly belonging to the Israelite ethnicity. The Israelites were not illiterate. They were not semi-nomadic Bedouins that didn't know how to read and write. You have to understand, this is one of the claims of the academic world. The Israelites could not have received the Torah on Mount Sinai. They could not have written the mezuzahs on the doors, as it's written in the book of Exodus and other times in the Bible. They could not have written the words of the law on plaster on Joshua's altar. They were illiterate, and that is why that's one of the reasons why they denied the veracity and the historicity of the Bible. Suddenly we have a Hebrew text dating to the time of Joshua, proving without any doubt that the Israelites indeed knew how to write and wrote complicated texts. The interesting thing, I believe, is the fact that the lead tablet is a cursed tablet. A cursed tablet that was found on Mt Ebal, which is, according to the book of Joshua and Deuteronomy, is the mountain of curses. And this could be a coincidence, but I personally believe that this tablet was probably written during the ceremony, before the ceremony, after the ceremony, but it was written in honor of that ceremony. And this was, again, this was a legal declaration. This was a legal document that was put inside the altar respectfully, as a sort of a testimony between God and the Israelites. And the fact that you have the name of the Lord written 6 times on one side and 6 times on the other, totaling 12, is exactly the proof. Because when you read Joshua, when you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 27, the number of curses that are mentioned in that chapter, the curses that the priests utter and the people of Israel say amen to, is 12. We have 12 arur, 12 cursed in the lead tablet.
Wow.
And we have 12 arur in Deuteronomy 27. This is not a coincidence. I am sorry. Let's continue with the last 2 conclusions. The metal, the lead that was found, was researched, and it was found to be originating from Greek quarries that were in use during the late Bronze and early Iron Age period. This also helps us more accurately date the metal and the tablet to that period of Joshua. And last but not least, and this is something again that we'll have to do another program about, but the altar is inside a footprint structure, a temenus, a surrounding wall in the shape of a foot, one of 6 that were found by Professor Zertal. And the fact that we found this lead tablet inside that site proves that the rest of those sites that were found, the footprint structures, are indeed Israelite. And I want to finish before just to finish this lecture by in a good note, because we talked about the cursed tablet. One of our viewers said, "Is it dangerous?" So I want to finish with something, with a good message. Many people ask me, why did Moses command Joshua and the Israelites to build an altar of uncut stones on the mountain of curse? You would think that the altar of God should be in a good place, on Mount Gerizim, the mountain of blessing. Why then is God commanding the Israelites to build the altar on the bad mountain, on the mountain of curses? And the answer, I believe, is the ceremony of the blessings and the curses is God's way of saying to us that we have a freedom to choose between good and bad. God is asking us to fulfill His commandments and receive the blessing. But it's also our responsibility to understand that if we choose not to, then we will have a bad life. We won't be blessed. We will be cursed. This is the message of the ceremony, a message of the freedom of choice. Why then is the altar on Mount Ebal? I believe that this is probably the most important message of the ceremony. If you choose right, if you choose to go in God's way, good for you. If you choose badly, if you choose not to go in God's way, and you feel the curse in your life, you feel that God is not with you, and you want to go back to God, you want to repent, God's altar is waiting for you on Har Ebal. He's waiting for you on the mountain of curse as a vessel to bring you back to the right way. The altar on Mount Ebal is repentance. It's atonement. And I think that this is probably the most important message of this site.
Wow. That's an amazing presentation. I love how you ended it because repentance is so incredibly important. And as you said, God is making a way for people to come back. If you get out of his commandments, that's a bummer, but here's a way back. And I think that is just so incredibly powerful. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. That was amazing. Thank you. So a question from Federico, he asked, how do you recognize the pile from the original stones?
Well, this is a question that was asked repeatedly in as Adam Zertal's lectures, and he always responded by saying, well, you need to learn archaeology for 3 years at least to be able to understand, to differentiate between that. But so that everybody would laugh when he said that. But I have to say that I'm not an archaeologist, but I did participate in archaeological excavations, and that's the situation in every archaeological site. You have basically walls that collapsed because of earthquakes or man-made destruction, and you need to find a scientific way to first categorize each level to a certain time in history, and also to be able to recognize the older walls from the newer ones. So it's a whole it's a science. It's really a science, and I think that one of the things that, to answer the question now more clearly, is that when you take off the outer layer, you start seeing stones that are not just resting one on top of the other, but are kind of like stuck to each other. Not because there is any glue between those stones, but because they were there for a long time, and they kind of got stuck to each other. That's different than what we call in archaeology a floating stone, which is a stone that wasn't originally attached to what's under it. So that's one way. And the second is when you see straight lines, when you see stones on a straight line that repeats itself, you understand that there's a certain pattern here that is not coincidental. It's a straight line that was put there intentionally. So I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Another one is, who were these tablets meant for? Who were the curses directed to? I think you answered that, but maybe you could just recap that idea.
Well, I joked with my wife that this could either be a legal document of the Israelite people with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or a very angry wife that really hates her husband and decided to curse him. But putting the joke on the side, and I believe that there are two options. One is a self-imprecatory, I believe is the word.
Imprecation. Yeah.
A self-imprecatory curse, following the ceremony in Deuteronomy 27, where the Israelites are saying, if we don't follow God's commandments, we will be cursed. And so it's basically referring to the Israelite nation. That's one option. The second option is that this is a curse on the other nations of Canaan. That because we know that the Israelites were in a process of conquest, in the process of basically trying to push out the Canaanite presence in Canaan. So this could be a curse on the Canaanites or the other nations. So I believe that these are the two possibilities. I don't believe that we have a text of a person that is cursing another person, just because it's too complicated. I mean, 46 letters on a metal that was then very expensive, by a scribe with very. This could have been Joshua himself. This could have been the scribes of Joshua. Really, and again, I have to say that this is just we're doing all this talk prior to the publishing of the academic paper on this lead tablet, which is probably going to be in August or September. And so we're going to see there some conclusions by, the real experts, not Aaron Lipkin. But what I'm telling you, what I'm sharing with our audience, is what the experts are telling me in their conversations with me. And I have to say, I this is not humble to say, but I made history. The fact that I'm involved in the finding of this artifact. My grandchildren are going to walk into the Israel Museum in 50 years, 60 years, and they're going to say, Saba found this. And I'm so blessed to be able to say that. Sorry for my arrogance.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, it's exciting. So, wow, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the Awakening Report. I'm delighted. I get to see you this week at a prophecy conference in Colorado Springs. I'm looking forward to that. And I actually have something to share with you. I made a little discovery myself, so I'm looking forward to that. So hold on. We'll say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll just kind of chat for a minute here. But I want to thank, again, Aaron for joining us. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us as well. If you want to sow into this ministry, you can go to my Patreon page and you can give as little as $2, whatever you want. It's awesome. Also, please go to Aaron's website. Aaron, will you just tell us really quick, what is your website that people can find more about you at?
Okay, so first of all, I highly recommend joining my YouTube channel. I have some really interesting material there that people would very much enjoy. So I'm on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook as well. I also publish posts on biblical issues and talking about the period of Joshua and the Judges. To make a living, I'm also a tour agent. So we have lots of group tours coming into Israel. And we specialize in bringing groups to Judea and Samaria, which is an area that unfortunately is not visited by Bible believers or anyone for that sort. So if you want to visit Bethel, Shiloh, Joshua's Altar, Hebron, visit www.lipkintours.com, and we'll be happy to see you in Israel.
Yeah, awesome. And just on that note, we actually were going to do a tour with you a couple of years ago, and this little thing called, a virus happened, right? So we didn't get to do that, but we're hoping to do that in the next couple of years, God willing. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Pleasure as always.